Welcome back to the Obvious Choice podcast. I'm here in Mexico now, left Nicaragua, and we'll see how this recording goes. Hopefully it's good. Should have good internet. I was in this place last year. Amber is with me, and Amber got a very interesting message the other day. I think you said it was a voice message, basically asking about how my advice that I give is radically different from advice that somebody else gives that this person also, I guess, respects. And what the heck do they do about that? And I thought that that made for a really interesting conversation because my guess is I don't know who this person is. I don't know what the advice is. We're going to learn that from Amber, but well, we probably won't learn who it is, but we'll figure out what the advice is. But my guess is that the other person is probably really smart and probably does good work and is probably giving good advice to somebody else. And so we're going to get into that. I think it'll be interesting. So what was this message? What was the context first? Like, who is this person?
Yeah, so this is a student of ours and also a frequent podcast listener. He consumes everything, that you put out. Very smart, very caring. Hence why this question came
has to
up.
be very
Yeah,
smart
exactly.
if they consume everything
Yeah.
that we do. Yeah.
Yeah. But so he obviously noticed the differences and he's like, okay, like I like both approaches, but I'm feeling conflicted about what's right because there's
The differences between what I kind of preach and somebody else out there and what they're
Correct.
talking about. Right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
So he sent me a voice message and said that, I'm really torn between two authority, figures that I really respect and admire. And this other person, so this is from a book. I don't remember the title of the book, but Alex, I can't say his last name, Hormozi, something like that. $100 million or something book. But
we are very different, him and I. So this is going to be very interesting.
Exactly. Yes.
Oh shit!
And so
my pen
basically,
exploded. Go on.
Uh-oh. You okay? Somebody trying to take you out? Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
now
right?
you can get fingerprinted.
Keep talking. We're good.
Okay. So from us, we're very thoughtful about we don't want people putting out free services forever, right? And that's a great way to kind of attract the wrong people and potentially get taken advantage of, was his takeaway from conversations we've had around this topic. And then the advice he was reading from this book that he felt really inspired by was basically saying, before you launch your product to the public, make it free and then ramp up the price as you go until you get to the price that you want to charge. And so he's saying go free, and then we're saying don't go free. And he's feeling confused.
So I'll get into that conversation in a little bit because I think both people are right. I think it's very much dependent on the type of business model that you have. And that's one of the issues with books versus podcasts. And I'm sure that I don't listen to his podcast or anything that he does, but I'm sure that just because we're radically different people. And so I think that the information that he gives is good information for one type of person. And I have identified that I am almost the polar opposite of him. And so as a result, the good information that he gives is bad advice for me. And so I've just kind of largely avoided it. It doesn't mean that I don't take some bits and pieces here and there, but I generally don't consume anything that he does, and I don't see his stuff that much. But a lot of people do. So we'll get into the free versus, but I think what more than anything else, what it highlights is that there are different scenarios, and that's one of the benefits of a book versus a podcast. In a podcast here, we can really explore the nuances of it. In a book, you have to be very authoritative when you write. I mean, it wouldn't make for a very interesting book to be like, this is what you do. Here's the formula. Like, I know he's got this value equation thing. It's like, here's the formula. And I look at that and I'm like, no, that's really good that he was able to build that framework out of it. But here's all of the places that doesn't work. And that's cool, right? And both are valid. And I think that's the conversation that we need to have. But you can't have that conversation in a book.
Yes.
And so it's very much up to the responsibility of the consumer of the information to be able to first really check in with themselves and say, number one, the person who's giving this information, do they seem like somebody that I align with in terms of the way that they live their life? And beyond the superficial make money whatever type messages, like the type of person they are, do I kind of jive with that? And that's one of the really cool things about what social media brings into our world, is that you can kind of get to know the person on a deeper level. And so Hormozi, for example, is radically different than me in that for him, it's just like get as fucking rich as possible. Like, I mean, from what I've seen, he very much errs on the side of nihilism. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, life is fucking wonderful. Live it up. Enough is enough. And I've kind of reached that point now, to be honest, where like, yo, I'm good. I don't need to push the envelope. I think it's interesting because, in my early 20s, I was all about hustle culture. And I really bought into that mantra. I mean, I trained 10 to 11 to 12 clients a day, one-on-one, from whatever, 6:30 in the morning until 9:15, 9:30 at night. And then I'd get home and I'd eat a sandwich and I'd be on my computer by 9:45 and I'd be working till 2 in the morning and I'd do it again. And I took pride in that. And I still take pride that I was able to do that at that point. I think that instilled a work ethic in me that I can bring up if I ever need it again. But I think now that hustle culture, for the most part, is cringy. Yep. And I think it just highlights the difference of things that we think are important or valuable in our 20s are often not things that we think are important and valuable in our 40s. Yep. At least for me, that's true. For others, I mean, that's very true. He's, they're a dual income couple, him and his wife, and obviously they're from the fitness industry, so I knew them beforehand as well. They're a dual income, no kids, have no plans to have kids, have no desire to have kids. Work is everything. Their businesses are everything. Obviously, their brands are everything. Whereas with me, it's like my kids and my family is everything, and the work and the business support that. And so I don't think either approach is wrong. I respect the hell out of what they're doing and what they're building. I think it's incredible what they've done. I think the way that they deliver information is phenomenal. But it also ain't for me. Yeah. And so the first message here is to really check into yourself and think about, what type of life do I want to be living? Right? Do I want the yachts? Yeah, that's how it's pronounced. Sorry. Do I want that? Do I see no end? Do I see no goal line? Is that what I desire, to make as much as I can possibly make because of this endless competition? Because to me, what is the name of his podcast? The name of his podcast is literally The Game. To him, it's a game. Mm-hmm. And to me, I've already won the game, dude. I don't need to play anymore. And I don't want to play anymore. But I get that the game is a fun game to play. Yep. And I get that the game gives a lot of people fire in their belly. So this is me saying, I hope very clearly and respectfully, that in the words of Dave Delanave, when he was talking about deadlifts, different shit is different. Mm-hmm. Different people are different. There really isn't that much more to it than that. And in order to produce information, particularly in a book, now I hope that I didn't do this as much in the Obvious Choice book. I tried to give a lot of nuance, and there is in fact an entire section on good information but bad advice. Mm-hmm. But you have to be short, you have to be to the point, you have to be final, or else it makes for a pretty crappy book. And I think it is the responsibility of the consumer to say, this is the type of person who's living the type of life that I have decided that I want to live. And there's no right or wrong answer to that, generically. But there probably is a right or wrong answer for you at any given time, and that could change. Right now, in this phase of my life with 2 young children, Allison's 40th birthday is tomorrow. And what are we doing? There's like 20 people coming into town. We have our friends here. We're in Mexico, right? So we're, a bunch of people coming in here. We rented a great place and we're enjoying this phase now with our kids and taking lots of time to really be grateful for it. And if that means that I, metaphorically ship a few less boxes in my business, fine. Totally fine. I don't need to look at those numbers. Whereas if you're pushing the envelope in the business, you obviously do. And it's very all-consuming. And so this is so interesting, Amber, because Allison and I had a conversation this morning coming back from the workout. We did our first workout back here in Mexico. And working out in other countries is always so interesting because culturally it's very different. Yep. And so I've hired trainers in Mexico, in Costa Rica, in Greece, in Montenegro, Dominican Republic. I've hired trainers all over the world, Thailand. And also gone to classes and gone to different facilities in all of these places and trained every which way. And you learn something from everything. But here in Mexico, we train out of this place called Quilombo, which is this wonderful place in the jungle. And it sort of started as like a jiu-jitsu boxing type place. And then they started doing functional fitness, like CrossFit-y type classes, but like functional fitness, super intense, like stupid intense. Like today was a 24-minute, every minute on the minute, 6 pull-ups, 8 deadlift, row to high pull, and then 10 bicep curls. And so you do that 8 times, and then you run 400 meters. And there was a bunch of running and like a bunch of other stuff in between. And it was my first day back here training like that. Well, they don't give a fuck that it's my first day back. Mm-mm. Because it's my responsibility to modulate, and nobody judges. Mm-hmm. It's my responsibility to choose the weight. It's my responsibility to modulate the training. They're there to help if I need help with anything, with form, whatever. But they're not going to handhold. You contrast that with a lot of the programs that I've been a part of in Canada and the United States, where it's really hand-holding. Mm-hmm. And if you are new, if you are perhaps lower level, whatever, it's like, oh, no. Like, you're okay. Like, I don't know if you can do that. Like, there's no self-accountability. And Alice and I were just reflecting on this today. And I don't know what's better or worse. For me, as somebody who's really experienced with exercise, like, yeah, sure. So it kicked my ass a little bit more than it will kick my ass in a month from now when I've been doing this thing 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. But that's fine, right? I'm done. I feel good. Nope. And I guess the conversation that Allison and I had afterwards, kind of reflecting on the difference between the two, is appropriate for what we're talking about here, isn't it? Yeah, where definitely. I think it's very important to have just even the littlest modicum of self-accountability of just because other people say that this person is doing well, for whatever reason, they might be financially incentivized. They might just get caught up in the euphoria of the thing. The other person might just be super flashy. Like, I'm not flashy. I sit back and let you come to me. I'm not the type of person who's going to do super overexposed YouTube thumbnails and shout in your face and, hey, today we're going to like, I'm just not that guy. I have no interest in that. And that means that I will not get the type of attention. I'm often, especially with the online trainer mentorship, we are often the second or third thing that people do. Mm-hmm. They discover us once they're in the game for long enough to realize that we are not as loud because we don't need to be as loud. Mm-hmm. There's a quiet confidence in that. And that's the type of business that I want to run. And that's why we turn away over 90% of people that apply for the online trainer mentorship. But on our calls, for the people that we do speak to, over 50% of people convert to clients, students on the calls. And yes, that's partly the skill and the guidance of our student success coaches and our sales team. But more than anything else, it's that they come to us knowing who we are. Ready. Well, we're not going to be as big that way, but we're going to deal with a lot less bullshit.
And then when we have things that happen, like when you and I both hit burnout at the same time, like in a different type of business, right? Like that would not have gone down well.
Right.
So having the business the way that you have it set up allows for kind of real life hiccups that may occur.
I mean, I fight back so much against the performative aspect of marketing these days. I just don't have any interest. I don't buy into it. And this is not me in like a maximization conversation. This is me just saying like, yo, this is how I want to live my life. And I understand that there's going to be trade-offs to that. I understand that it will not get as big. I'm not going to get as much attention. At least short term, I'm not going to get as much attention. But then I also look at the people who I admire, because that's really what this conversation, I think, boiled down to is about, is who are the people that you really admire? Not the people that you think are really rich, not the people who you think have had a lot of success in the conventional sense. Who are the people who you really admire, the people who, for whatever inexplicable reason, you're like, yo, they got some shit figured out about this thing called life. And that is a deeply personal thing, because to you, you might look at that person and say they got some shit figured out about this thing called life. Somebody else might look at that same person and say they don't know shit about fuck.
Yep.
It's a deeply personal thing. Mm-hmm. And so when you check in with yourself, and this is what I do, I check in with myself and I say, who are the people that I really admire for reasons that I can't explain? And I try to think about why. And I try to look at what they do. So I'll give you one example. One of them is Seth Godin. Seth Godin is sort of a marketing legend. He's written like 27 books. Some of them are good, and to be honest, some of them are just awful. Like I picked up, there was a co-working space that I worked out of in Nicaragua the last month and a half. And there was one of his books on the shelf, and it was a book from like 2005. I don't even remember what it was called. But I started flipping through it, and I was like, this book is objectively really bad. But
I've only bought one of his books, and I couldn't make it past the first chapter.
Well, I mean, his books are more theoretical, right? Less practical.
Yeah.
And so it depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for like a much deeper understanding of something, his books are very, very good. If you're looking to solve immediate problems, his books are generally not that good. And so his books have been very impactful for me. Linchpin, This Is Marketing, I think is one of the best books about marketing that's been produced. But it's not a book that's going to teach you what to do. It's a book that's going to give you a deep understanding of why humans buy things and help you better basically persuade them ethically to buy the important things that you do. But then there's other books that he's produced that are objectively really, really bad. But what I admire about him is that this dude has kept his head down and done his thing, his way, with his own rules, for decades. He still, I think, blogs every day. He runs a blog every day, and it might be short, but he writes a blog post every day, and he's been doing it for 2 decades. And for the longest time, he didn't even have an email list. It was a Feedly account, which, for anybody who remembers, is an RSS feed, which basically means you subscribe to the feed of his website, and you go to a feed reader called Feedly. For anybody back in the day blogging, they remember this. And you basically get updated when there's a new blog post on like a website that you've subscribed to. He didn't have an email list. He just used that for years. And then when Feedly shut down, he finally started an email list, and the email list was just an automatic pull. There was no message from him. It just automatically pulled. Right? Doesn't do photos for his blog post, doesn't do anything like that. Has never done social media, still doesn't really do social media. It basically just like copies his stuff. His blog was on, I think it was Blogspot for the longest time, like to the point where I think at one point he was 98.6% of all of Blogspot's traffic because everybody else had migrated to like WordPress or Squarespace or whatever. And he's like, yo, this works fine. Why would I change?
Love it.
And I think now he's finally on WordPress because I think Blogspot just like doesn't really exist anymore. But my point is, he does his thing. His wife owns a little bake shop. He lives a quiet life. If he agrees to do talks, he's basically stopped doing any talks or public appearances where he has to travel.
Yeah.
He just like,
why?
And he's producing books, right? And he understands the trade-off of he will become perhaps less immediately relevant and more like the guy behind the guy that you discover when you're ready to discover him. And so I look at that and I admire the hell out of it. Because by all accounts, this guy is left alone to do the work that he's passionate about. And he lives a great life with a great woman. And it's quiet. He is obsessed with like chocolate and making chocolate and coffee. And he just has his hobbies and lives this quiet life.
That's cute.
I look at that and I love it. I think it's beautiful.
100%.
I think it's wonderful. But you juxtapose that with what Hormozi is doing.
No.
And you could not get more radically different marketing, right? Personal brand marketing, call it. And you know what? They both work. And they both work more than good enough for that person. One of them has found their enough, lives their quiet life with their kids, with their wife, eating baked goods, whatever, in their small town. The other one is on their private jet, appearing live on every, call it tier 1 podcast, flying around the country constantly, doing appearances in this insane cycle that never stops of content production with a team of, I mean, I don't even know how big his team is, but my guess is he spends a few $1 million a year just on payroll for, call it publishing, editing, videography, all that. Whereas Seth Godin has nobody. Like nobody, like not one.
Sounds fantastic.
So again, there's no right or wrong, but there's very different. I still remember, Amber, this is why I love this topic so much, because I think it's such a fascinating topic because it's so clear to me that there's no right or wrong and that nobody's crazy and that everybody's just playing different games. And so it's a matter of saying, you know, who do I align with? There was a message that we got, I think our sales team got, and they relayed to me. This is a little while ago, but they're like, yeah, you know, I really love the online trainer mentorship. I love the idea of it. I'm deciding between you guys and one other company. You know, we really love John. We really love what he stands for. Really love that he's like, you know, a family man. Love how committed he is to his kids. It seems like he's built like a great business that supports that. The other guy, you know, though, has just overcome so much. You know, he was in jail and he was addicted to drugs and he's overcome that and he's building it. And I'm just like, that should not be a conversation that you're having with yourself to decide, like to even think about those two differences. It should be so immediately obvious who you align with there. Mm-hmm. This other guy, I guess there's two of them, maybe. I don't really know. I don't pay attention to what anybody else does. But I guess there's two of them. Like, both tell stories of overcoming drug addiction for the longest time. And I don't know, somebody was in jail, I think. I don't know. This is all secondhand. And I pay no. Once people start talking to me about other people in our space, I just kind of blank out most of the time. Because they're just gone so quick for the most part. Like, I'm just like, they're not going to be around in a couple years. I don't know about these
for what they've overcome. You know.
Well, and I don't know these. I don't know who these guys. I don't even know what their names are. They might be doing great work. I assume that they are. But I just have known that so many people have come and gone in our space that I just assume that nobody's going to be around in 2 years. So it's not even worth like learning that much about them. But they. But as like a consumer to think, it's like one person is like, you know, clearly much of his marketing is just like how much he deeply, madly loves and is committed to his family and builds a business that supports that and doesn't take away from it. The other ones are like, make that fucking money, bro. Yo, we used to deal drugs, then we went to jail, and now we're all about making this fucking money, you know, ethically. And they're like in your face, flashy, shredded, like high def videos. It's like one of those two things is going to appeal to you, you know, and not both. Yeah. And so it was so jarring when he came to me with that, like, you know, I'm deciding between the two of you. It's like, how is this a decision? How is this a conversation that you're having with yourself, dude?
It's interesting though. Just the way people think about that kind of stuff. It's just very interesting.
So what was the actual, you said it was something about offering free and not free services. Yeah. What was the actual like specific kind of call it problem crux? Yeah.
So his takeaway from our conversations about launching a product or service is free can get you taken advantage of, right? That it's going to attract. Yeah, no, it's what
I don't believe that.
No, I know. That's what he said. What I think he's actually referring to is how low cost things can attract a type of person that is going to require more work or equal work to someone who's going to pay more.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's more what he's referring to, and just maybe didn't communicate that well.
And what did the other guy say? What's his name? What did Hormozi say?
Yeah, so to launch your product to the public and make it free, and then ramp up the price as you go until you get the price that you want to charge for it.
Sure. I mean, so first off, there's, what's a nice way to say this? There's varying levels of bullshit when you market online that you have to decide what you're okay with. And the lines are very gray. And so when you decide what you say and how you say it based off of future plans that you know in the moment, like if you're going into this saying, I'm going to increasingly ramp up the price of this thing, those ways to do that I would consider to be ethical, and ways to do that I would consider to be unethical. And to market and say things like, you know, I have nothing to sell you, it's free, and then turn around and like try to sell everything, and then buy parts of companies, and then, you know, tell people that there's something free if they sign up for a trial, and the trial doesn't even like account for the entire free thing that they do, so they have to upgrade. It's just like, it's not wrong, you know, but there's degrees of bullshit. And when you get deeper into this game, I think it's very important to really think through what levels of bullshit you're okay with. and what you're not. And that's a very different conversation than thinking about what works best. Because the first thing that you could think about is what works best, for sure. But then the next thing to consider is, but am I okay with that? Yeah. Right? Is this where I want to, do I want to rest my head at night knowing that I'm okay with this? It's like everybody in email marketing who says that you should send another email. You should like put the wrong link in an email and then send another email that says, oops, wrong link.
Bark just did this. It was so good though. But yes, they Bark, you know, the company for like dog toys and stuff.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so they have really fantastic marketing, but they do this like all the time, where it's like, oh, we did an ad and it's like they made a joke about the number 69, and then they did a follow-up email saying like, oh, apparently we offended everyone, so we're going to round up to 70% off, or, you know, whatever it was. Right. But there's always some kind of follow-up email that is, you know, some kind of mistake or oops, I'm sorry, you know. Right. It's a well-known joke with them, but yeah,
so if you turn it into a joke, I mean, it's well known in email marketing that the more emails you send, the more money you're going to make.
Yep.
And so again, right, tactic number one is just to figure out any way to send as many emails as you possibly can, because you know that's how you're going to optimize revenue. The second way is to say, okay, well, like, is there a balance between like levels of bullshit? And maybe that balance is like, we're just going to have fun with it, which it sounds like is what this company does. That's what they do. I've never heard of them, but it sounds like what this company does, which is great.
Yeah, that's great.
So again, what are you okay with? What are you not okay with? The conversation about free and ramping up your price, though, I think I don't have any problem with free at all, obviously. My entire call it second career, I don't know. My entire career has been based off of free content. Like, I was spending $1 million a year on free content before it was cool to spend $1 million on free content. And that was the PTDC blog. I mean, we had a team of 8. We had an editorial team of 8 doing inarguably the best content in the world for our industry. And so it's not a new thing to me to do lots of free, but where I think the conversation often goes sour, and not for anybody putting out information about free and ramping up, not anything like, I don't know what Hormozi says. So this is not a comment on anything that he says or doesn't say. I have no clue what he says or what advice he gives. But what theoften happens, or what gets missed in respect to the people producing the information, even if they include it, this gets missed because there's levels of details of information, and often when you're consuming it the first time, you go for the top level and you almost miss that next stuff, even if it's there a lot of the time. And so what often happens is that how you use free is very important.
Yep.
Free can't take away from paid. Free cannot take away from the valuation or the perceived value of your paid. For example, if you're a trainer, you don't give somebody a free session. You give somebody an $80 gift certificate that can be used towards your services one time, because your sessions cost $80. Therefore, they have an $80 value that you've maintained. They're not getting a free service and then being told to pay for that service that they otherwise got for free. So how you communicate it is really, really important. If you're doing like a free session or assessment or whatever it is, if we're talking fitness. But I think the types of things that you do, I mean, this goes back to the whales and minnows approach. Mm-hmm. I think you do very, very expensive things, or you do free things. And to me, free means it could be no cost, or it could be no expectation of service. So my books I include into that, because nobody reads a book and they expect to be able to get coached by the author of that book. Some authors sell that as an additional service, but there's no expectation, so it works. Contrast that with a membership site where you're making the same or less as you would make from a book, but there is an expectation of service because of the business model. It's a very different conversation, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And so I like free as a way to engage people and help grow people to the point where they're ready to work with you. And then whenever they work with you or they're ready to buy your thing, you're the obvious choice for that thing because you've already helped them make a few steps in the right direction and begin their transformation. And if you help them begin whatever transformation you want them to make or they want to make, could be fitness, could be anything. You're going to be the person that they choose, and price becomes much less of a conversation. But it's not a matter of selling the same service for less money. It's a matter of figuring out how to help people grow in whatever they're doing that are not ready to work with you yet, and keep them in your ecosystem and help them so that when they're ready to buy, because what's that the Chet Holmes bio pyramid, right, Amber? We have it in the Online Trainer Academy in the textbook, where 3% of people are ready to buy right now.
Oh, yeah.
Another 5 to 7% are open to it, but not yet ready to buy at this minute. 3% of people are actively looking to buy and will respond to an advertisement. 5 to 7% of people at any given time would probably be open to buying if you're able to engage them the right way. And then something like 70 or 80%, I can't remember the exact numbers, but 70% are not ready right now, but might be ready at some point in the future. And then 10 to 20% will just never buy. Yeah. And so advertisements and conversion type activities really only take out the 3% that are ready to buy right now. Immediate nurturing with content is 5 to 7%. And then trust and reputation basically grows that remaining 70% that might be open one day, where you become somebody who they start to listen to as they basically go up that buyer's pyramid. And then they never get to the point where they respond to other ads or even think about buying from somebody else, because by the time that they're ready to buy, you're the obvious choice. And that's, I think, the misconception. That's what I talk a lot about in the book, is that by the time people respond to conventional ads, all of the obvious choices have already been hired. And it's not even, you can't measure it. And that's the hard part. But it doesn't show up in a framework. It doesn't show up in an equation or something that you can easily map out. I think the value equation was basically how to charge more money for a thing, if I'm not mistaken, what he does. So that's a different kind of conversation and framework, but that's my take for free. What do you think with free?
Yeah, well, what I told him is, there's a time and a place for everything, and that's the hard part when you're taking in information. If you are a brand new coach, right, there may be something there, but knowing this person and how hard they've worked and where they are in their career, it's probably not. You've earned that right not to have to go that route.
Well, that brings up a good. Sorry for interrupting you, but I wanted to put a pin in what you want to say, because I want to hear it. But it brings up a really good point, which is, are you offering free because it is legitimately a good method to be able to build your business, or are you offering free because you lack the confidence? And this seems like it's easier to put yourself out there by saying it's free. And it's almost like a protective mechanism.
100%. Yeah. And that's the vast majority of our students who talk to us about, well, I want to do, you know, a few free things so I can get some testimonials, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, because that's what it is. It's just they're too scared to ask for money. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't think that I have anything else to say. I think that's the pod.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. No, that was a fun conversation. That was a fun prompt for an episode. Thanks for that, Amber.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you are looking for another episode, I'm actually going to recommend you one that I was not on, but Amber and Ren crushed, which is managing the "you're too expensive" objection. So that's episode 165. And Amber and Ren are so in the weeds with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trainers, both new and also very experienced, that are dealing with various levels of customers and on sales calls, but also producing content and trying to convert online. And the way that you went about meeting people where they're at, Amber, with this "you're too expensive" objection, and providing very tactical and practical strategies and approaches, I thought was really, really well done, and something that I would have never been able to do. So you guys did a wonderful job for that episode. So that's episode 165. Scroll back, have a listen. Managing the "you're too expensive" objection. Amber, thanks, buddy.
Bye. See you later.
Bye-bye.